Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Coffee Break Blogging. Today, we're going to talk about SEO. Now, if those three letters sent a little quiver up your spine, I don't blame you, because the world of SEO has been this fairly complicated thing for quite some time. And a lot of people, they feel like the traffic to their site is very highly dependent on SEO, which of course it is, unless you engage in some paid traffic and stuff like that. But at the same time, it can be really frustrating to try to SEO your site properly because it seems as if the rules are always changing. And the thing is, they sort of kind of are. At the end of the day, any rule, any algorithm change that comes out, these pesky marketers come out and they try to game the system. And there's SEO firms out there who get hired to basically SEO client sites. And they, don't get me started on SEO firms. A lot of them do some good work, but many of them do some crap. And they're constantly gaming the system, and Google doesn't like it because they're trying to put quality stuff up top in the search results, and not stuff that has been gamed to get there. And there's so many SEO firms that basically take advantage of the fact that clients don't understand this stuff very well and will then hire them to solve it for them. They many times don't get very good results, or it takes a very long time, and they just come back whenever the client comes to them and be like, hey, why am I not really seeing any results from all this exorbitant amount of money that I'm paying you? And their answer usually is something like, oh, you have to have some patience. This takes some time. Anyway, that's SEO. Obviously, that is an opinion, and I can state it because all I want because it's my podcast. Anyway, I want to talk about how to approach SEO today. Now, first of all, the old way of SEO is very much related to things like backlinks, keywords, meta tags, things like that. Now, I'm going to say old way. It's not really old. At the end of the day, backlinks are still highly relevant. I mean, it still very much matters. Keywords very much matter. The thing about keywords, though, is that you have to do things naturally. Where a lot of the old school SEOs came in is that they were basically keyword stuff in the article. They were artificially building backlinks and that had the same keyword phrase in it over and over again. And it was a very unnatural setup. And Google can tell. They can tell when it's unnatural. And so when you're approaching backlinks and keywords and things like that, in these old ways, don't expect very good results from it in general. Now, meta tags generally are not really looked at that much anymore. And so I really wouldn't waste a heck of a lot of your time worrying about things like meta keywords and meta description, except for something that I'll be mentioning here coming up in a bit. Today, these search engines, and we're talking primarily about Google here, they use a different set of signals as a sign of quality. Google is trying to get the best stuff, the most related and high quality stuff related to whatever is plugged into their search engine, and they're trying to raise that to the top because they want to have a really good user experience for people who are using Google. All these companies out there, they want to have a good user experience for their users. Same with Facebook. The whole issue with Facebook organic reach and stuff like that, a lot of that is because marketers have been abusing the system. At the end of the day, Facebook wants people to come to Facebook and have a good experience. And it's the exact same thing with Google. And so for that, they use a different set of signals. And generally what these signals are they're looking for are things that are signs of quality, signs that people have said that, yes, this piece of content is great. Social media is a big one. Social upvotes, social shares like that is a big sign of quality because people are generally not going to share those things unless they think it's really good. Backlinks, yes, are also a very strong sign of quality because if you've got sites out there that are naturally linking to your blog post, that is a very strong vote of quality for your blog post. Now, going back to the unnatural environment, you can go out there and get a bunch of backlinks to your blog post, but if it's all happening real fast, it's all got the same couple of keyword phrases in it, Google knows that it's not natural. And it wouldn't be, okay? Because if a real live human being is just kind of writing their own blog post on their own site and they think that your article is a good reference or something like that, they're going to naturally link to it in their own unique way, okay? And so a lot of human beings that are naturally linking to your article are going to link to it in different ways. And that's what people are looking for. Now, today, because social and all these different signals are being used, we need to look at a different way of thinking about SEO. And that's user experience optimization, UXO for short. It's the idea of actually measuring engagement with your blog post. And it comes down to three basic categories. One is, do they click on it? One is, do they actually read it? And thirdly is, do they engage with it in some way? And engaging could be things like sharing it and stuff like that. Now, there are a few things that Google will look for, because the natural question on these things is, how is Google going to know what's happening? Well, first of all, if you're running Google Analytics tags on your site, okay, it's a pretty good piece of intelligence for Google. Not only that, when somebody searches for something and your blog shows up in the search results, they're measuring all the click-throughs, so they can tell if anybody's clicking through from google.com over to your blog. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're also utilizing mass intelligence from the Chrome web browser, because it's their product on what people are reading. I don't really know the answer to that, but Google's got lots of ways to look at all these various signals of quality on your blog post. Now, let's look at a few different things that go into user experience and how they measure it. One is good old-fashioned click-through rate. Are people clicking on your blog post? Okay. Now, how can you optimize click-through rate? Well, one is to have a very solid headline. We've talked about headlines before. I've definitely talked about it over at blogmarketingacademy.com, but having a good solid headline that sells the click, that makes them want to click on it, is a good idea, right? Now, here's another thing, meta description. Now, I mentioned earlier how most search engines don't really look at the meta tags anymore. And for the most part, that's true. But the meta description is important because it does show up underneath the headline on the search results. And so when people are deciding, when they search for something and your blog shows up in the search results on Google, they're going to see your headline and they're going to see the little couple lines of text right underneath that. That's your meta description. So here's what you need to do. You need to have your headline and whatever shows up in that meta description sell the click. You need to make them want to click on it, okay? With those two things, because when people are searching for things, those things are what's going to entice them whether to click on it or not. And then Google is going to see the click, and that is kind of a sign of quality of your blog post. Now, how can you control this? Definitely use the WordPress SEO plugin. I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. Totally free plugin and very high quality. But with WordPress SEO, you can control the meta description, you can control the title, but the interesting thing here is that you can specifically control those things for search. So, for example, you could have a different headline show up on Google than shows up on your blog. And you can do that with WordPress SEO. So you can actually tweak the headline that is going to show up in the search results purposely to sell the click, because you want that when somebody's searching for something and your blog post comes up in the search results, you want a high percentage of people to click on your blog post, because that's a sign of quality that the search engines notice. Okay, let's move on to another factor here of user experience optimization, and that would be scroll depth. It's the idea of how far down the page do people scroll. Now, if you have a high percentage of people who come to a page and they never scroll down, that would not be a sign of quality, because that basically you're telling Google in this case that they came to the site and said nothing was valuable here, and you probably would leave, which would also translate into your bounce rate, which we'll be mentioning here in a minute. But scroll depth is a measure of, do people scroll down the page? Are they actually taking their little mouse wheel or their trackpad and moving down? Now, how can you get some signs of quality by increasing your scroll depth, getting people to scroll down? Well, one thing is that you can put content over the fold of your page. Now, the fold is basically the very bottom of the screen. And so anything that goes down toward the bottom of your screen, but obviously keeps going, is going to generally get the person to want to click. So one way to do that is to have a compelling image, maybe an infographic, something like that, that shows up, is visible without any scrolling, but then obviously keeps on going. And that's going to make the person want to scroll downward in order to see the rest of that graphic. Another thing that you can do in written content is to tease stuff that comes below. So at the very top of your blog post, you can make a promise about what they're going to get. You can maybe tease one or two of the points that they're going to see that's really going to spike their curiosity and make them want to read the entire post. And those kinds of things can make them scroll down. Another little trick that I've seen some sites do is they'll add a little arrow that kind of hovers there in the footer, and it just kind of makes it visually apparent that there's more down there, and there's, I think, I don't remember the name of it offhand, but I think I saw a WordPress plugin that will actually make this happen. I've also noticed it over on the Apple website. One place I noticed it was the Apple Mac Pro homepage, where they're selling the Mac Pro, and they've got a little arrow there that makes it very obvious that there's things to be seen if you scroll down. So that's an idea of how to increase scroll depth. Now, another factor that Google looks at is time on page. How long are they there? If they're on that page for 5 minutes, that's a hell of a lot better sign of quality than if they're on the page for 10 seconds before they go. Okay? All right, so how do you increase time on page? Well, infographics is a pretty good way to do it, because infographics, generally people are going to sit there and actually study the image for a little while. And in the process of doing that, they're probably going to scroll downward. So that's a twofer right there. You're getting scroll depth and time on page. Another thing that really works well for time on page is putting videos on there. Because generally, if the video is embedded there, people are going to sit on the page while they watch it. Okay, so if you've got a post that has infographics, videos, you can also have really long posts, but the thing is, you don't want the really long post to be totally text driven. You want it to be very much multimedia. So if you've got a long post, lots of quality there, has a ton of images in it, maybe a video or two in there, you're going to increase time on page, and it's going to be a post that's actually going to get some legs, okay? Because that's the kind of stuff people like to share. Now, another factor that Google looks at here is the bounce rate. Now, we've talked about bounce rate before on Coffee Break Blogging, so I'm not going to go that deep into it. It's just the idea of what percentage of people come to the page and then immediately leave. That's your bounce rate. Now, on episode 56 of Coffee Break Blogging, I talk a lot more about bounce rate and how to actually lower your bounce rate. So that's episode 56. And for that reason, I'm not going to go too much more in depth into that topic here. But one thing that I do want to make mention of is the speed of your site. Because you've probably heard before that it will raise your search engine rankings if your site is really snappy and it's on fast servers. And that most definitely is true. And one of the reasons is because slow loading sites are one of the biggest contributors to bounce rate. Okay? And so when you have a fast site, people don't get all impatient, and it allows all these factors that Google is actually looking for. And obviously site speed directly is also one of them. It allows them all to increase. So yes, the speed of your site is definitely an important factor. One of the reasons that I am hosted over with WP Engine, which is definitely a host that I recommend that you guys check out. Bluehost is one that I recommend for many of my people who are just starting out, where budget is a little bit more of a concern. But WP Engine starts out at $29 a month. You get discounts. I think you get a free 2 or 3 months of hosting if you sign up for a year in advance. But WP Engine is a very nice web host. I really like those guys. And if you can afford the $29 a month, then I think that they're a better game than Bluehost, actually. Okay, now one last factor that Google does pay attention to is spelling and grammar. Yes, they actually do look for stuff like that, because at the end of the day, a blog post that has poor grammar or lots of typos is a sign of a crappy, low-quality piece of content. Okay? I mean, it just is what it is. We all know this. And so for that reason, you do want to take the time to check your grammar, check your spelling. You don't want to use any article spinners or any of that crap, because those things usually it's very obvious that it was written by a spinner, by a robot, by a piece of software. So just generally write really good stuff and check your spelling, and that'll help. So those are 5 factors that Google does look at when it comes to optimizing user experience: the click-through ratio, the scroll depth, time on page, bounce rate, and grammar. Okay? So that is kind of the layout of SEO. These are kinds of the things that you should be looking for today. You want to this is why you can't really game the system very well today. You've got to basically create some really good stuff. And that's exactly the way SEO should be. You should not be able to pull some magic puppet strings and somehow rank an article that sucks. And in the old days, that's the way it used to be. But these companies are getting smarter. There's so much intelligence that they've got at their disposal to judge whether something is really good or not, or whether people like it, that it really is difficult now to game that particular system. So unfortunately, for people who are looking for shortcuts, the answer to SEO today is truly to give lots of value and have a really good user experience. Okay? That's the way it is. Okay? And with that, I'm going to leave you with an announcement of a brand new action plan that I've just released into the Blog Monetization Lab. It's called Building Your Email Follow-Up Engine. Now, here's what this is. This is basically an action plan that guides you to creating a strategic set of autoresponder emails that go onto your list. What this is going to do is, instead of you relying on simply a standard, newsletter, or you just announce your blog post to your list, this is going to give you a real strategy that will actually help you automate sales and things like that. If you've ever wondered what to do with your autoresponder, how do you balance out your autoresponder with your one-off broadcast messages, any of these types of questions, I do answer that in this brand new action plan called Building Your Email Follow-Up Engine. And you'll find that exclusively for members of the Blog Monetization Lab at blogmonetizationlab.com. With that, thanks so much for listening about the new world of SEO, and I will see you next time.